You're tuned in to the Stingbat Radio Network on FM 101.2 KRPG.
Welcome to Dungeon Master Diaries, a podcast about Shadowdark and other role-playing games where two GMs talk about their recent experiences at the table and hopefully give you something useful that you can take to yours. On the show today, we discuss The Dark of Hot Springs Island. Hello there, sages and adventurers. My name is Jody, and with me, as always, is my good friend and GM colleague, Matt. How are you, my friend?
Oof, man, it is humid today. It's hot and humid in the recording stew today.
Oh, I thought you were going to say in your me done G's. Well, they would be, because today's episode focuses on The Dark of Hot Springs Island, which you run some. So, Matt, take us to the Isle.
All right, so hang on a sec. I'm just going to find the part in the setting book titled The Dark of Hot Springs Island where it succinctly summarizes what is going on, so the GM has kind of some semblance of understanding of the lore, the factions, and otherwise, and kind of dramatically presents it. So give me 1 second here. Okay. That doesn't exist. All right. I did find, though, this overview page. Let me see here. Sorry, I don't mean to do this live, but I'm just kind of... There seems to be a lot of proper nouns that aren't defined here. There's a lot. This isn't really in an order that's like going to be comprehensible for the listener. All right. You know what, Jody? Scratch all that, since that's not going to work. Let me just describe the hex the party landed on. All right. Give me 1 sec. Okay, here it is. This is HS-04. Okay, perfect. All right. So HS-04. If we go to that page, okay, well, would they be able to see that? It's a jungle. Okay. That seems like not something that's on the coast. That seems okay. All right. You know what? Give me a sec. I'm going to get back to you because, to be honest with you, I have legitimately no idea how to succinctly say anything about The Dark of Hot Springs Island.
All right, we're back with the, I love a insincere DJ. Hey-oh, all right.
Yeah,
little rapid fire for you here then.
Yeah, gotcha.
You played this with Shadowdark rules.
No, I played it with 5th edition.
Okay.
2014.
2014, 5th edition. Very topical and of the moment. Now, you played this in an open table setting.
I did not. I played it in a closed table with 3 players.
Oh. And you followed it exactly as written?
Oh, Jody. Oh, you poor soul.
Yeah. So, gentle listeners, as I tee up Matt here a little bit more, just to set those up. We are way off our usual content threads here, except for the sacred golden thread, which is this is all focused on genuine experience from the table. You brought this book to me back in our 2014 5e days, some years ago.
I did.
Being very excited about it. We were playing in a Ghost Archipelago campaign you had designed and had lots of fun encounters with mind-flary sort of squid-faced fellas. It was great. Mm-hmm. And you thought this might show up. And I don't think it ever did, as far as I know. So I have kind of hands-offed it until... frankly, just before recording, started flipping through. Other than some of the genre questionable art.
Sure.
It's very stylish. It's very cool looking. I see tables. As you were doing your intro, I was like, okay, I'll jump to the aforementioned HS-04, and I see HS-04. Yes, it has a cool little icon that says village, and I jump to a page, and it's HS-04, 1, 2, and 3. There's a table at the top. It seems like there's lots of information here, and this would be just ready to rock and roll. You found yet another person who's built a hex map with multiple things to encounter on each hex.
Yeah.
This is increasingly one of your trademarks. I'm kind of jealous. It seems good. Your intro tone led me to believe not all is well on the Hot Springs Isle.
All right, so I want to start with just my quick and down and dirty review, but I'll start with a couple of caveats. Insofar as like no adventure can be run quote unquote as written, this isn't an adventure. This is a setting book, really. I have read in some way, shape, or form the vast majority of this book, especially the lore, but I haven't used all of it. I cut large pieces out that we did not explore the entire island. So with the understanding that no review is ever going to be a full and complete, is going to have a full and complete picture of the material that it's reviewing, et cetera, all those caveats, here's what I'll say, is that I think this is a work of genius in many ways. I think it is a tremendous piece of art. I think that there's enough in here that you could run an unbelievable campaign. So there's that. I will also say that I am not new to setting books that have a lot of lore, that have a lot in them. Having run Dolmenwood for as long as I feel like I have a pretty good handle on how to slowly drip feed lore out. This is a smaller hex map by a long shot. So this was going to be an extended arc of our 5th edition game, which again is another caveat that I played this with 5th edition, but this is a system neutral. There's literally no stat blocks in here. So the sort of difficulty level can be dialed up and down per, 5th edition's kind of balanced encounter mechanics, etc. All of that is to say, I think it is a brilliant design of sort of magnitudinally epic proportions that absolutely is unrunnable as is. I literally do not think, and I know that people have found success with this, so folks might disagree. The Hot Springs Island as a gestalt, so that would be the Dark of Hot Springs Island, which you were looking at right there, and then there's what I'm going to refer to as like the player diary. There's an entire other book that is written that players are supposed to find that has information for the players. That just like makes my brain happy. This idea that the designer of this setting put together and spent the time and energy to put together a handout that is literally a book. I mean, it's so awesome, and it's so cool. I haven't read the entire thing, largely because the end of my review is there's too much stuff. It needed about 700 editing passes to get this stuff down to a manageable size.
So when you say 700 editing passes to get down to a manageable size, it sounds like these are what I affectionately refer to as the big black Sharpie edits, where it's like, no, you just have to cut. You just need to cut stuff. Or was this no, you needed to overhaul the information, or yes, both?
Yes, and.
Oh, man.
Really, I mean, I don't want to get into, what I want to get into is like my experience rather, but the thing I'll say from the top is I actually think that the stuff that draws people to this, the kind of extremely in-depth and interesting and well-considered lore, the unbelievably sort of detailed and crazy nested tables, the densely packed, much like the jungle that it is set in, the densely packed aspects of the hex map. Those are the stuff that brings you to the adventure. The stuff that brought me to it, at least, that I was enticed by. I think what's ironic is those are the very things that make it fall down, and those are the things that I spent the majority of my time solving for at the table and during my fairly sizable amount of prep that I had to do to just run the dang thing.
That is what I'm curious about. And you expressed this kind of concern / frustration also with Barrow Maze, that there was a lot of digging and chewing to just get to a point where you could kind of start to understand the space enough to run it in a way that was conveyable to players so they could internalize the space. Is that what I'm hearing? Is it's that similar kind of issue of like, I'm going to do a ton of prep just to get to a level, and as you did in your intro, of like, where is the top, maybe one long column in the good old module days? Like some of those modules, the first full page wall of text was just, here's the background and get you up to speed on the adventure. But by the time you were done with that page, you're like, okay, I got a pretty good idea of what's going on. Let's get into it. Yeah, having to read I don't know how many 100+ page book, and then you need to figure that out for yourself. That continues to be one of these large tome. That's a heavy lift. That's a big ask.
So I think what this setting book does is, I'm going to say this for the last time, and then I won't caveat this, that I'm going to be very, very critical of this book. And I still think that inside of this book is something brilliant and amazing. It is the best job I've ever seen at hoodwinking the kind of casual viewer into thinking that this will be easy to run. I'll use an example. On the overview page, it starts with the bubble. Spoiler alert. It describes that there's an invisible bubble that hides Hot Springs Island from extra-dimensional creatures. And then it does the thing that it does so often, which is afterwards, it puts page numbers for reference. It does this again and again and again and again on this overview page, because in order for you to understand what the overview is, who these factions are, you have to go read about them. If you go read about these factions, you do not find nice, neat little kind of faction descriptions. You find walls of text. So, for instance, if we go to, I don't know, let's go to the Fuegonauts, which are funny named. The Fuegonauts faction page, which is on page 110, starts with the sentence, "Once upon a time there was an Ifrit named Svarku." And then it goes on for a small bit on that page, because there's a very large, I would describe as somewhat of a provocative picture of Svarku on a throne next to a scantily clad / partially nude woman, which is not necessarily that uncommon in this book. It then goes on to another page where there are 2 columns of text about Svarku in particular, and that entire 2 columns of text are continued on the next page that continues about like what else is important for this faction. It references other factions that you will need to deal with, and then it goes on for more pages and more pages and more pages just for this single faction. And at no point is there a simple, easy to understand summary of the faction. And if there's one thing that I think is frustrating, it is that in order to get the most out of this, you need, as a GM, to be able to act quickly. As we know, this is like one of the sort of cardinal sins of any GM is looking things up constantly. And eventually, I just had to deal with the fact that I was just going to make up lore, or I was going to infer, because there's too much information in here, and I was going to have to annotate this like a textbook if I was going to be successful. So that's kind of the cardinal sin of the adventure, and the thing that I think is it's the Russian nesting doll of lore problem.
And as somebody who really enjoys reading modules, I enjoy it. I find it as a relaxing hobby. It's part of why I collected these old school modules is, before bed, read through one, fold it up, set it down. I mean, you could fit a dozen or more in this book. I enjoy it. You and I have talked about, you generally don't enjoy reading modules as
it's not my favorite thing in the world. No.
However, even in flipping through, as you were going through that with the Fuegonauts, I was flipping along and I was getting to the point of like, ooh, this is too much. And I've interacted with modules like this. I want to throw another module at you.
Mm-hmm.
And there's 2 that come to mind that feel like the boring progenitors of Hot Springs Island a little bit. And I'm not sure how familiar you are with the two of them. I know you know what they are. So The Secret of Bone Hill.
Mm-hmm. I've read The Secret of Bone Hill a while ago, but yeah.
And have expressed interest, if I recall, of like wanting to use it for something.
Yeah.
Like we're enticed by it enough to be like, I want to use it.
Yeah.
The other one is one of the all-time best-known modules ever, The Isle of Dread. Have you read through that one?
I have never read through The Isle of Dread. I have definitely listened to Seth Skorkowski's review and overview of it, but I have not read the module myself.
So that's a great touchstone, and we'll throw that in the notes because I think there is a question of style in this kind of greater debate. And Isle of Dread, I remember as a young GM having a copy of Isle of Dread that I got out of my blue box and was very excited and was like excited at the idea of running it with my friends, and then started reading it. Was like, where's the adventure? What would you say you do here? And The Secret of Bone Hill always has cracked me up of like, it has this very dynamic cover and there's no adventure. Like, and even Bone Hill is kind of like, it's there. It does exist. It's a place. It's a spot to walk around and see things. And, and that increasingly it's just something I bounce off of is I'm like, if I'm buying a product like this, the design is undeniable in Hot Springs Island. Right. Like,
sure.
Like there is beautiful design. There is just looking at, I'm still back on that. Okay. HS Hot Springs 0401. Like that's this little blurb that, like you said, that sleight of hand of like, oh, well, this is the first thing then in that hex. So it should be keyed to like, you encounter this hex and this is no, that is not what one is. It is.
No, it's just the most important thing in the hex.
Yes. And then it becomes, well, what's the adventure? Well, you'll play and explore the adventure. And it's like, then I have to know all these factions to know what the hooks might be. Okay, but those factions I assume are then interrelated with the other factions. Mm-hmm. And man, it's just, it just becomes these like, this thing looks so cool. And I know there are GMs who have played Seth Skorkowski and loved these adventures. And like, this is their jam, this sort of thing. I don't know that I've ever really run one of these just because I get to the point where I'm like, if I have to make up this much, I'll just like take your map and a couple of your ideas, which it sounds like is kind of where you ended up of like, I took your map, I took a few of your ideas, and then we just let her rip and see what it turned into, which I think is probably kind of what happened with us in Dolmenwood too, is like it sort of turned into its own thing over time.
Well, I mean, we played Dolmenwood. I mean, in comparison, the amount of stuff that we made up in Dolmenwood doesn't just pale in comparison. Like, I would say, by comparison, we played Dolmenwood with a level of fidelity that would be in comparison, basically from out of the book. Like
well, you had to change that much in Hot Springs to get it all meshed together in a reasonable timetable.
Change, ignore, etc. And here's what I want to call out some things that I think are that. If listeners like this or like the module or the setting that they might call out, there is like a one-line hex key that does a good job of giving you one line that describes the hex. And so HS-04-01 is the Glavrock Village, 30 well-defined huts, home of Glavrock, the Night Axe Ogres, and their 6 surviving females. So, again, this does a little bit of sleight of hand because that's the most important thing in the hex. I guess it's the thing that you would see first, ? But what I feel like this setting does over and over again is that it sort of doesn't understand that it's an exploration adventure. It is written almost like a point crawl, in that you're just going to kind of go from one point of interest to another. And there's some specifics about how you deal with time, which I used. There's watches. We used watches, like real watches in 5th edition. It works. You can do it. And I will just say like that I actually felt like this setting was a really great mesh in terms of rules for 5th edition. We did I think a 5-level, like 30-room dungeon crawl. Like it was in one of the kind of major points of interest. I felt like the setting did elicit the kinds of feelings and the kinds of reactions from the players and the kinds of situations that it wanted to create. But it did so in spite of everything about the encounter tables and the way the information is presented, not because of it. And I think the reason that I wanted to talk about this so much is because I am so passionate about, I like settings way more than I like adventures. I don't need you to have an adventure. Like an adventure module thing. I think the reason I don't like reading them is because I get past the first quote unquote like scene or room, and I think like none of the rest of this matters because the players are going to get in here and muck the whole thing up, and like why would I bother reading this? I'll just skim it. And what I like about settings is if I read a faction, I'm like, okay, I get enough information about a faction. I know what the faction's about. Great. Now I can start perseverating on like, what are the players going to do when they interact with this faction? How would I introduce them? We talked about this in our Dolmenwood episode about like, how do you introduce factions? How many do you introduce, etc. I actually think this has like the perfect number of factions. There's a couple that I think are very like they're sub factions. So I think there's a perfect number of factions. There's just too many sub factions. It's just too complicated. Guys, just come on. So for instance, like the lizard men have like 2 different factions that are anyways. Yep. But what I want to ask you, because you know very little about this and you didn't play through it, is I just want to ask like what helps you most when you're like, you like reading modules and you've read a lot of them. What do you find to be like the most useful component of the modules that you read when you're reading them? Because I sort of don't have a heuristic for that. I like, like layout, etc. But what do you got?
So the number one, the big one is actually where you started on the overview page. Having a really strong overview this is somebody I knew years ago was in the military and they were in intelligence and they were given this frame of how you present intelligence to your higher ups. And it was tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. And that first one, tell them what you're going to tell them. That overview is where if I'm sitting down with a traditional module, I'm thinking of, let's go with the Caves of Chaos. Keep on the Borderlands. There is the keep. There is this thing. There's a dark, there's evil cultists. Monsters are out there. Go out, explore the monsters. And there's lots of plot hooks out there that you can go and find. And each cave kind of has its own gimmick. That's all covered in the overview, not in detail of what each one is. But then as I'm reading the module, I start doing exactly what you're saying is, and they could do this, and maybe they'll go to this cave and I could prep this. And I think in terms of what could I prepare and have ready to go. And that's where the call out text, the numbered rooms, the map, and that back and forth we all like to do of I'm looking at the map and I'm reading the key, and that's kind of a fun interaction. And I go, what's in this hex? And I get to read about that hex. What would it be like if they go? That's really fun. But if you don't have a strong anchor for what is this place about, what is the core conflict, then as you're reading it, to me, in the worst possible sense, it's just reading a history text that doesn't have a through line of history. Right? If somebody took your history textbook, threw it all the chapters up in the air and then glued them back together, and they were like, here's the history of people. That would be very disorienting. It might be put together in some sort of way that made sense once you were at the end, and it starts feeling that way. What's funny is I glance at this and to just emphasize I think what you called the bait and switch is, to me, this looks like what I wanted the Isle of Dread to be.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks like, we can go to all these hexes, and because a lot of the Isle of Dread, to be just really blunt, is empty. Most of the island is empty.
Yeah.
Or for you to fill in.
I like those more than a lot of people do. Like, I love Quest Catan and the Search for the Unknown, but
yeah, I mean, there's random encounter tables, and that's how you fill in the hexes.
Right.
Right.
I mean, yeah.
If we're going into a hex, like, I think, and we have the luxury of, Isle of Dread was written many years ago.
Sure.
And we've since learned of like, hey, on a hex map, you should have multiple things in hexes. And I don't know, that through line, though, that piece, to go back to the question you originally asked me of like, what is the thing you need, is a level of where are these things leading? Why I enjoy reading a module is I kind of, in reading it, get to go on the quest myself. I get to like take myself through the story.
Yeah.
And that becomes enjoyable in much like a choose your own adventure. I'm just going to read through it room by room, but I'm still going, most dungeons, no matter how jaquade they may be, there's still a like room 1, room 2. There's an assumption of order that you kind of are likely to approach. And then it's fun to what if on the other possible entrances. And yeah, it's that through line that makes the whole thing enjoyable and sustainable and keeps you coming back. And if that's lacking, I don't know. Yeah, I think you and I actually are similar in this, because like if you give me a really cool setting, but I don't have a sense of a central actionable conflict, I don't really care.
Oh, that's interesting. So let me ask you this. You ran Cyborg.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll say a kind of facsimile of Cyborg because you put your own spin on it. But I think you used...
It's very much... I can say, no, I was running Cyborg.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't quite... I was kind of bummed to miss that session, actually.
I changed some wrapping paper.
Great. So you ran... But as far as the setting is concerned, the thing I like about Cyborg and some of the Borg games and is that there is no... There's no question what the tone is or what sort of the setting's vibe is. And that gives you this kind of grounding principle. So I'll just say, just for the purposes of being as sort of charitable and also open as possible, there's also on page 10 of The Dark of Hot Springs Island, there's a section called Facts About the Island, which sort of does what the overview and kind of quick reference was supposed to do. It's in a completely weird order. The section titles are all wild. It's just what I have found as we're talking about this is when I think back, I think, okay, the first thing in Facts About the Island is the title, It's Invisible. And then the first two words are sort of. And then it describes this bubble that's around the island. And that was weird because it kind of sort of came up, but it's not really a grounding principle. Then you have it's primal. And that has been a fairly grounding principle, but it's a little broad. Like it doesn't actually not all the factions are going to necessarily adhere to that. The next one is it's got black sand beaches, and then there's 2 sentences or 3 sentences that just say there's volcanic activity, all the beaches are black sand, it's not science, it's aesthetics. And that tells me not a lot. Like again, so I'm not going to go through all of these, but there's a verbiage, there's a writing style that is also doing this bait and switch, where there's a title that says nobody likes elves, and then it describes the elves once lived on the island, and that's really interesting, and we got a little bit into that lore, but that lore is super complicated, and like there's some, I don't know, I'll just come out and say there's some misogynistic tropes that I don't love in this book. I don't care if the authors are or are not good people or whatever, that's irrelevant to me, but just like the way that the writing works, and in some places there's just some tropes that are played on for drama and for the purposes of the setting that I'm not in love with, that I kind of excised, and the elves are somewhat kind of connected to some of those things that I excised for the purposes of like, I'm running this for 3 young women, and I just wasn't going to kind of go full bore into some of the more lewd aspects of it. Long story short, there's some stuff that's like that anchors the setting, but for you, because again, like you have more experience in this, what have been the most solid foundations? Because for me, there were such clear, solid foundations in Dolmenwood that I was able to come back to time and time again. The Fae, the kind of superstitions of the world, or just superstition in general, that towns are usually safe, the wilds are unsafe. Those sorts of like facts, those truths. What are the most solid and useful kind of truths, or like what do they speak to when you are thinking about an adventure, pre-written or otherwise?
Well, and I think that's a big difference between how you and I approach GMing, which is, it's occurring to me that there are GMs who undeniably love this setting, and I imagine have run multiple campaigns in it, and I can see this. I even in looking at as I was following along with you about the facts about the island pages, I was like, oh yeah, I can see where 5e would be extremely tonally appropriate to this adventure. If I ran this for Shadow Dark, it would take on an interesting in-between tone.
It would work actually really well.
I think so too. I can see that absolutely being the case. And I think that difference that I'm noticing is that what I like in adventures are kind of shorter adventures. What I enjoy are I'm reading it to go on the adventure. So if I'm going to look at a setting per se, which isn't usually my jam, it's not usually something I do a lot of, the setting has to really give me, there's two things I'm going to look at that are when I do get excited about one is a brief history of the location. So like I have a sense of what are the I hate to use this phrase because this points the compass a little bit wrong, but what are the broad stroke geopolitical events that matter to adventurers, right? That's the important piece is broad stroke what's politically going on here.
Well said. That's really well said. That's interesting. I like that.
So, my home campaign setting, a dragon has destabilized the Northern Empire that rules the entire Southland kingdoms, all of them. Like the King of Kings is kind of isolated because a dragon woke up and screwed up his whole region. Anytime you run into political unrest, it's probably to do with that, players. Okay, cool, great. Moving on. Let's get down to a town level and talk about what's going on the streets with you guys today. Right? Like that little here, this is that documentary useful to know. Yeah. Here's that useful background thing you should know. So that's one of like a setting I need that, very Cliff's Notes AI snippet tweet version of the history of this place. And in looking at this facts about the island page, I'm like, it seems like we should be starting this story with the elves.
Well, yeah.
Like I'm like, why are we dancing around this? The other piece is then, so what are my hooks? Like that's the two things. Give me the brief history. What are my player hooks? What am I as a GM? What am I leveraging to bring my players into this place and get them excited about it? And in skimming through the facts about the island page in the lower right, there's an adventurers guild. Oh, well, that's item one. Like, how are most adventurers coming to the island? Well, there's an adventurers guild. Look, there's an ex-pirate. Okay, so there's piracy around here. If there's an ex-pirate, then there are pirates or were pirates. That's how we access the island. Cool. Okay. History is elves. Now, okay, so I figured that shouldn't be a thing I need to figure out. That should be like, here's how this works. So rather than what
So Jody, I'm going to stop you there.
Yeah.
Because this is funny.
Yeah.
Because you highlighted a thing, and I want to show you just another like weird sleight of hand. Because if you read through, because I did this exact same thing. I was like, there's a guild. And again, I dropped this into Exandria, so I kind of massaged some things, but I was like, oh, cool. This is a cool way for me to introduce a faction that's an Exandria faction. But one of the interesting sentences under there's an adventurers guild is, all adventurers on the island are assumed to be here as a part of Rand's guild. For context of Hot Springs Island, the guild tie-in is not much more than a backdrop. And I don't know what that means. And there's not a whole lot, like the guild is important insofar as it is in the Swordfish Islands, which are the neighboring islands to Hot Springs Island. But this is what happens a lot in this book, is something seems very important, And then the text and the actual book itself says, no. That actually isn't as important as you thought. It's just here as like a backdrop. You can use it if you want, but it's not going to, like, we never ran into any random encounters featuring any of these adventurers or other people from the Martell corporation or company. Never. They never came up in any of the roles that we made, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And we never found any points of interest that dealt with them. And so this was like a whole part of the story that you either have to kind of shoehorn in as the GM, but there's all these other things that feel like you can't do that because there's so much additional information you're trying to give your players. So
is there a rumors table? You mentioned tables, and I kind of want to talk about those next. You mentioned tables. Is there a, like, here are truths about the island rumors table to disseminate to your players? Was another thing we went back to over and over and over in Dolmenwood. I mean, before we did our final arc, it was, let's gather up some rumors at that mechanical above table level of like, hey, let's gather rumors. I'm in flipping, I'm not seeing it. Not in the classic Gygaxian, here's a bullet list with the problematically false rumors included.
Okay. If you go to page, Jody, if you go to page 182, there is a, this is the only part in the book where there's an actual list of rumors. It is a D100 table of rumors, and they are rumors of the Elven ruins. And they are written by Patrick Stewart of, I believe, Veins of the Earth. Veins of the Earth? Am I getting that correctly? Somebody's going to come at me because it's a very sort of important OSR document. Anyways, Patrick Stewart, not the Patrick Stewart, the author of OSR content, it has a couple of contributions to this book that are by far the most interesting and also, I found, completely useless parts of this book. That this D100 list includes and keep in mind that it's unclear that these are just for the Elven ruins that are kind of around the island. Number 45 is, those chimes are the stolen voices of singing slaves. I have read a lot of this setting book. I have no idea if that is alluding to an actual piece of lore or is just a sort of a place from which
that's not an actionable rumor. That's not a hey, there was gold in them there hills. The elves were famed for making magic items, and their magic items are made of maiden's hair. Look to the corn silk, and whatever. I mean, I'm thinking actually of an adventure I'm hoping to run, Shadow Dark adventure, not by Kelsey but by another party, and there's some great little lore drops like that. They're still flavorful, but it's like, oh, that's super actionable. Looking through that's 100 weird things.
And it's about like mostly about a single hex, which is another one of my criticisms, is that the hexes are not created equal. There's a single hex where like there's an elven city, it's Hot Springs City, where these ancient elves kind of built up and then in a cataclysmic way sort of were rended asunder, et cetera, et cetera. They got hooked on drugs. But long story short, a lot of these do actually sort of, they do connect to this place. But the vast majority of our sessions were spent in one hex dealing with one problem. And I felt like there wasn't, once you understood that there was one hex, which is this elven city where there are elven ruins, and there's this bathhouse, which is, anyways, unrunnable because it doesn't actually have a map. It's the one place that you probably need a map. It has like one of the coolest monsters that I am very excited to potentially talk about. That I think I ran very well and was super cool.
That's shocking because there are so many maps in this book. As I was flipping through it, I was like, there's just tons of maps, which is great. That's big plus. Yay, that's great. Except apparently this room, that's
the bathhouse,
a super important place. And
there is also This is the last time I want to. I want to. This is me reading from this book as an attempt to hopefully sort of show just how much how much creativity is in here, but also how ridiculous it is to run. So the bathhouse is this. It's this sort of like the sort of I don't know, the keystone of this city. It has an incredibly cool monster. A giant monstrosity of a plant grows in the humid dark beneath the bathhouse. It has no intelligence to speak, but of its size, powerful tendrils, hunger, sense of self-preservation make it dangerous nonetheless. Very cool. It's essentially kind of like a beholdery kind of vibe, one big eye, and I guess, I don't know, maybe not a beholder, but...
I found it. It's a very dope Watcher in the Water.
Yes, that's a better idea.
Yeah, Watcher, the thing in the water from Lord of the Rings, and also beholder-ish vibes and a little Swamp Thing kind of action going on for it.
So on the next page, you will find on page 98, Bathhouse, the Trap. This is a time trap. So there is a pocket dimension in which the first 4 floors of the bathhouse are contained. And all the people who were there and the events that took place in the 2 hours leading up to the capture of one of the Nereids, don't have time to mention one of the factions, these like female kind of water nymphs, that there's a time trap. And so there's an itinerary of the trap, and it sort of goes in a time loop. And I think, as written, it is not runnable, and it also is one of the most like, it breaks my brain trying to figure out how to run this thing. However, it's really cool. Like, it's a really cool idea, and I want to be able to run it. And I literally just stripped it out, and I didn't run it. I was like, I can't figure out what this would look like in play. Like, I don't know what is this thing supposed to be?
I mean, this screams to me with Shadow Dark that it would occur in real time, but without the further context of, well, what does it do and where does it end up is like, I don't know. But I mean, it would actually work. Again, a rad idea of like, I'm going to set a timer, and every 15 minutes as players actively play, I'm going to say, stop while you're blah, blah, blahing, and there's this thing happens. And then I just interrupt play. In real time. That, especially with like a pocket dimension, that could totally work, because whether it's happening fast or slow is on a separate anyway, to your point, extremely cool idea. Every time I flip to a new page in this book, I go, extremely cool. This is so neat. You mentioned it a while ago, and I want to talk about it. Here on we're looking at the bathhouse, the trap, with this itinerary of the trap, and this very cool idea. And I'm seeing, as I'm flipping around, also there is the tone of the writing is unfortunately a miss. It is doing a thing where I see this. It was in favor in the early 2000s. This like conversational, jokey tone in rule books and in modules, and
one of our favorite board games of all time, Galaxy Trucker.
Yes, the rule book has all these...
Yeah.
Just these little weird quips, and it doesn't matter, and it's all very tongue-in-cheek, and that's one of the rare exceptions. It doesn't work, is the punchline in the story is, no, you are delivering information. You can't be jerking around the reader's tone when you're doing procedural informational text, which a modular book like this is. So I'm noticing that issue of, I'm like, wait, the sort ofs and the little, parentheticals. But in the lower right of this, there's art objects and their location, and it's a 2D20 table, or a D20 table, excuse me. And there's 2 different columns. There are tables on tables on tables on waffles in this book. And like when I was back at good old where they started, HSO4, up in the upper corner, there's a
Let's do it. Let's go back
3D6 table that has basic encounters, and then Night Axe encounters, Ogre Edge Bone, I don't know what that means, and then their motivation. Now, 3D6 is fascinating because your median 10 is going to get you 2 Night Axe, 2 Ogres, 1 Bone, and they are fleeing or in pursuit with a thank you for putting an asterisk on that goes to something.
Well, Jody, those asterisks you might be interested in noting. Those asterisks are they're noted at the bottom, I believe, of the encounter tables page, but I'm not sure. I also had the exact same question.
So what is that doing? Because there's these tables are everywhere, and I'm like, well, are those how you fill in the gaps of things? Much like the Isle of Dread, your random encounters and a random T-Rex shows up, or a pterodactyl, as I like to call them, shows up. Like, what is?
All right, so as
love
again,
the motivation tables as I'm flipping through too.
So here's the thing: these tables are wonderful. They are completely unusable at the table. You cannot, in a reasonable amount of time, as far as I'm concerned, unless you have like an absolute and complete command of like this entire book and this entire setting.
Right. And there are folks, again, Matt and I are not yucking. If that's your jam, that's so cool. You're awesome. Do that.
Right. Caveat. These 3d6 random encounter tables, the way that I rolled them was through the technical grimoire who put together a Hot Springs generator online. And I was running this game online.
Oh, I remember you telling me about this.
And I literally would have quit running this adventure if there wasn't a bespoke generator, because I was at the beginning rolling these things with a level of fidelity. I would roll them before the session. I would roll a few of them, but they just took so long. And you have to look things up. You have to look up the relationships between the different factions. Sometimes you get a beast. There's no stat blocks in here, which is both fine, but also means that you have to go find the stat blocks in another book and then retrieve those stat blocks and have them ready to use. And this is the ultimate, I think, sleight of hand of the Dark of Hot Springs Island book, is these encounter tables, because it would not have harmed the game to make these, or the setting, to make these easier to parse and make them less complicated, and they don't produce the results of 3 or 18. They just don't. Like, I never rolled, and maybe the RNG gods via the computer rolled a 3 or I don't know. I wasn't going back and sort of finding out what was rolled after the results came in. But you just are never going to get some of these results. Like, how often do you roll in 3d6 down? It's like less than 1% chance to roll an 18 or a 3 on
substantially
3d6.
Less.
So if you're doing that consistently, sure, at some point that will likely happen, statistically, but for the most part, it's just going to be the 10 and the 11 with some variance in either direction minorly. And those results tend to be very similar. And if they're not, then that's fine, but you can't memorize a single table, because each of the various hexes corresponds to different tables. Those tables have different entries. Those tables have different entries in terms of how many beast or intelligent or elementals there are and where they're located. So even when you get a heuristic for I rolled a 10 and I rolled a night axe and I rolled some ogres. By the way, those ogre, edge, and bone, those are different types of night axes. Ogre, they are like orcs or ogre orcs in this setting, which I actually thought was really cool. Great motivations, but the motivations are different on the facing page for HS0301. And that's fine. That's great. But so you generate beast encounters differently, where you have a number occurring rather than rolling in a column of different types. So you don't ever go through the same procedure. And the reason I'm getting so exercised about this is the same thing I've been saying the entire episode, which is that I desperately want more people to run this. I do think that there are some whether you want to call them content warnings or whatever, again, I think there are some tropes in here that hinge on some stuff that I'm not cool with. But generally speaking, I think this is like such a cool setting. And I think that it's sort of, I don't know, it's iconoclastic nature led it down this road where it becomes so hard to run that I don't think enough people are going to see it and run it and experience it. And it's really cool. Like it's really cool.
Well, as a testament to that coolness, as I'm sitting here and you're pointing out all these frustrations, and I'm literally flipping along in the book with you, looking at the frustrations, being like, oh yeah, that's annoying. Oh, that's, yeah. The more I flip through it, the more I'm like, damn, I'd like to run this.
Yeah.
And I stand by at having read Isle of Dread a bunch of times and flipping through this. I'm like, this is what I want Isle of Dread to be.
Yeah.
Is this. I want, the secret of Bone Hill, I find borderline inscrutable. Like, it's just this, like, it's just stuff on a map.
Yeah. See, I love that.
And it's like, and some of it's hidden. Cool. So like, see the bubble, it's hidden, sort of. Like, come on. Like, why did you tell me? Yeah, in flipping through this, you mentioned a couple things you mentioned that I want to ask you a bit more about. There are, as I said before, lots of maps. There are many caves. You mentioned a multi-level significant number of room dungeon.
Yeah, that was the bathhouse,
bathhouse
that we played through.
Awesome.
Which does not have a map in the book.
I did see that on that couple. And we haven't said this yet. Needs to be said. It is impressive that almost everything looks like it is on a 2-page spread. Like, there are things that flip multiple pages, see the history books or the history bits and the lore bits. But when I'm looking at, like, okay, here is the second floor of Tranquility. Here's the third floor. Each of those is a 1-page spread. The albino centipede. Hey, that's a 1-page spread. The Crystal Sea Cavern. It's a 2-page spread for the whole dungeon. Like, that seems really good. And thinking with my Shadow Dark brain, I go, yeah, there's a ton of dungeons to go explore on this island. That seems super dope. You had some time. I can see the 3D6 tables and the your variance on 3D6 drops dramatically each time you add a die. You know, it is, it's not exponential, but it is a dramatic drop in the variance in that band. Talk to me about the dungeons. I see so many dungeons and I'm like, Shadow Dark dungeons. Yeah, let's do it. We thought it gets a thumbs up, right? Right.
Honestly, for the most part, yes.
Oh, good.
But I probably didn't play through enough of them to really know. I do think that the one that I didn't get to play through that I really wanted to is the Shattered Aquifer, which is on page 74 and 75, which has a lot of these sort of like mephits that are one of my favorite parts of the. I love the interplanar nature of this place. It's really cool. There's like steam mephits and lots of different kinds of mephits. The steam mephits being very interesting and funny because they like gambling. But the thing that is hard is that when you're reading these room descriptions, they're good, but I am becoming more and more of a fan of, or less and less of a fan of like the old school essentials methodology of laying out a dungeon room, and more of a fan of give me a 1-sentence thing that I could potentially read out loud. Like, this is a 30-foot hallway. It looks like this. It has these things in it. And then give me some bullet points about the room. Like, I like a sentence of context followed by all the bullet points for the details about stuff. This doesn't have it. There's also this is a really pedantic thing. There's also different typefaces on this page that I'm not entirely sure. Like, I don't know why. Some of them seem to be for like additional information. In fact, I think that's what they're for. But like, it actually makes it hard for my eyes to like kind of cruise around the page. And I
think it's done actually to help with that.
No, I know. But much
and
like
it doesn't
many,
work. It doesn't, like, with love and respect for the effort, it doesn't work.
Much like many things in this book that we have talked about, it is an attempt to do something that falls short.
Yeah, it becomes just noise.
So
yeah,
in summary,
I want to give a positive in those room descriptions,
yes.
and then I want to hear your in summary. One of the things I'm seeing, and again, I'm curious because so far everything with Hot Springs Island is not as it appears. That's sometimes great, and in this instance, mechanically, again, mechanics should be. There's all these black bolded terms. It feels like those are the sentence you're talking about. So
totally.
Literally the first room one, I'm saying the first room, but room one, because there's a logic to that, folks maybe embrace if you're writing adventures. Room one's the most likely entry room. It's listed, it says gravel floor, stalactites, stalagmites, rough basalt walls, puddles, rhythmic hissing. That to me is like, okay, cool, I can work with that. There's text in between all of those things, but in my brain is now fully adopted to VHS. What's visible, what's hidden, what's secret.
Totally.
And this goes, bold is visible. Next font next to it in brackets, more text, not bolded, would be hidden. Like if you ask some questions, these are the answers. And then perchance the separate font below it that's not a new area would be the secret. That's like, oh yeah, there's this thing's going to happen on a time limit. And it, again, neat. That's a lot of me figuring out
totally
but every page.
It works for that room.
Yep.
It doesn't work for all the rooms. And I think that this is my sort of frustration with some of the old school essentials kind of house style, is that sometimes the stuff that they bold feels like it should be hidden. And sometimes the stuff that is hidden underneath those bullet points is like stuff that would be unbelievably
obvious.
Like it would be obvious that those puddles are steaming and bubbling. Like maybe, but we don't actually have any context unless we look at the map, which in that case, the map suggests that like this is like craggly and like it's not easy to see. So maybe those puddles, you can't even see them because if you look at the map, the actual puddles aren't even near the entrance.
Right.
They are around the corner. That happens time and time again. Is it bad if you describe the puddles and they're not where they are on the map? No. But like if you're using this as a VTT map, which I was, they walk in, there are no puddles in visible range. So again, this is nitpicking, but this is my problem with the way that a lot of these things are. Like when you bold something, you decontextualize it from like a sentence structure, and a sentence structure requires that there's a subject, et cetera, et cetera. And so I like this sentence structure because it creates a unified, holistic measure of like what is important, what is the subject of the sentence, which means that it's sort of the thing that we should be focusing on, and then there are additional elements that can be kind of tacked on as desired. And that single sentence will set the context and allow me to understand and interpret the other elements of the room. And we can argue about the way that we should lay out dungeons until we're blue in the face. But like that is my preferred style. I don't really want like the paragraph of read aloud text, but I do like something that I can just like, if I read this single sentence, it would tell all the players all of the information they need to know about the room.
Yeah, the agreed on some form of the visible. Like you walk in the room, here you go. Here's what you need to know.
Yeah. All right. So in summary, I hope this wasn't too tedious of an episode to sit through because it was basically kind of me both complaining and also then reminding people that actually really like what's in here. But in summary, I think there's a lot to learn about adventure writing in here and a lot to learn about setting writing, which is that there is something inside of here that is brilliant and wonderful and would be super fun to run. But this is a kill your darlings situation where like these 3D6 nested tables are interesting, but they're impossible to use at the table to do kind of generative gameplay. The book itself is not useful insofar as there's so much page flipping between faction pages that are difficult to parse that it becomes it is not a reference book. It is a history tome in many parts. And so I would recommend, if folks are interested, we didn't even talk about the field guide to Hot Springs Island, which is its own kind of brilliant, wonderful mess. I actually think that this is something that folks should, at the very least, think about as a PDF purchase, because it is so fascinating. So, anyways, I know I just kind of got ahead of myself.
Yeah, man, like, you're all over the place this episode. You started with like rambling through your intro, and now, you know what? I want you to cut to a sponsor and take a moment to think about what you've done today.
All right, Jody. It's that time again. And, you know, people come here for the content of our show. They come here for just real smart and cutting analysis. And when you're sitting through an episode of Dungeon Master Diaries, listening to two guys who are, first of all, always right, and second of all, have the best takes, you might find yourself at the end of the episode, you've lost track of time. Maybe you're in a time trap. And at the end of the episode, you're thinking, my God, I'm hungry. And that is where Tuber Eats comes in. Because Dungeon Master Diaries is brought to you by Tuber Eats, which is, as you know, again, this is one of our longtime sponsors. This is the Halfling Meal Delivery Service. If it's been a long day and you're tired, or you've been listening to episodes, you've been binging episodes of Dungeon Master Diaries, which you should, and you should listen to all of them again. Go all 72. Go back and do it. Do you really have time to cook? No, because you're paying attention to us. Thank you very much. So, if you need food delivered right to your door, Tuber Eats is the best meal delivery service out there. And they don't just deliver food, they make it fresh to order. Savory meat pies, honey cakes, roasted rooster, dumpling soup, their famous ale stew with ruby red tomatoes. You know the drill, gang. Get food delivered now with no minimum order. Did you smoke a little bit too much pipe leaf today? Were you listening to a little bit too much DMD? Not possible. Do you have a hankering for something tasty? Just use the code DMD. There it is. When you order, to get 10% off your first order, Tuber Eats. That's right, folks. Tasty eats and the hairiest of feeds.
Alrighty then, it is time to bring this topic into the light. Matt, what is your first takeaway from this chat today?
I'll keep it quick. That big ideas need editing. And this book could have used the big black Sharpie, but I'll save my what comes after the but ... for my last takeaway. But editing would have been a good idea.
Yeah, the more revolutionary idea, the more tightening it usually needs. To that end, actionable truth is my first takeaway. This is, I'd say it over and over and over and over, is players right there sitting at the table. They've never played before. You're starting a new thing. GM, you got to tell them something they can act on. Don't be like, and there's a town in a place that give them something. The stranger walks up and hands them a whatever. I don't know. The fact that there are not like, here are things for adventurers to do on the island. Here's a list of 20 or 100 seems strange to me. And I know there are GMs who will go, I don't need that. That's what I want to figure out, because we all got our own things. But for me, it's like, man, give me some inspiration for what are the players going to do.
All right. So the thing that comes after the but ... is that sometimes when it comes to artistic expression and things like the Dark of Hot Springs Island, imperfection and missing the mark and what is awesome in its own right. Like, I love that this book took so many risks and did things differently. It was released in, I believe, 2017 was the copyright date. And it was a step away from a lot of the stuff that was happening at the time in some interesting ways. I think that in the interim, we've learned a lot in the last almost 10 years about adventure design, about setting design, about presentation of information. But I respect the hell out of this as an artistic endeavor.
It's why punk rock music is awesome. You know what? And I'm going to end with this. I would love to take Matt's advice, grab myself a copy, and run this setting someday. I legitimately, and I say that as somebody who usually doesn't like setting books, and I think this looks super fun. and I have to go into it with the sleight of hand. Also, I have to get to a point where my players will allow me to run something else because we're in the midst of the campaign and I keep throwing options to try something new and they go, no. And I go, okay, well, back to the campaign then. So someday I very much would actually like to take this one for a spin. And if I do that, you'll probably have to listen to it all over again here. All right. As the torchlight grows dim, we hope you're able to find something useful in this episode that you can take into a future game. If you have any questions or unique experiences from your table that you'd like us to discuss in a future episode, you can email us at dmdiariespod@gmail.com. You can also reach out via YouTube or Facebook, but best of all, get at us and our listeners on the Dungeon Master Diaries thread on the Shadow Dark Discord channel. You can find links to those feeds and any other materials we referenced in this episode's show notes. There's some good Seth Sorkowski videos in there for this one. Check them out. And until next time, may your islands be light, but your hot springs be dark.
Oh, that was a good one.
They're all good ones. Read your stuff.
That's right. Production of the Stingbat Radio Network. You, me. Intro and outro music composed by Christian Schuster. Independent production, not affiliated with the Arcane Library, LLC. Shadow Dark RPG is a product of the Arcane Library, which is copyrighted in 2023. A lot of nudity in there.
So much nakedness.
Yeah.
It's off-putting.
It is a little bit.